Sometimes, betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people who sit beside you at the dinner table, the ones who smile while they're slowly erasing your name. My name is Ethan Hale, and this is the story of how I was cut from my own father's will and how the truth found its way back. The morning after my father's funeral felt heavier than the rain clouds above the house. The estate, once filled with laughter and the smell of his coffee, now stood silent, too quiet, too empty. I had spent months caring for him, watching the strongest man I knew grow weaker day by day. Even in his last moments, he still managed a faint smile and whispered, "Don't let anyone take what's right, son." At the time, I thought he meant his company. I didn't realize he was talking about something far deeper. Everyone around me seemed to move on too quickly. My stepmother, Victoria Hale, handled everything: the funeral arrangements, the legal papers, even who got to stay in the house. She was poised, elegant, and always in control. To others, she looked like the perfect widow. To me, she looked relieved. My half-brother Ryan was another story. Ambitious, always chasing approval, but lately, he wouldn't even meet my eyes. He used to be my shadow when we were kids. Now he barely spoke to me unless Victoria was in the room. Then, there was Mr. Cole, our family lawyer. A decent man, but his eyes always carried worry whenever Victoria entered. He followed her instructions too quickly, almost like he was afraid to say no. And the only person who still felt real was Lucas, my best friend since college. He came by often, checking in. "You okay, man?" he asked one night as we sat on the porch. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just feels strange. Like I don't belong here anymore." He looked at me concerned. "Ethan, your father built this home with you in mind. Don't let anyone make you forget that." But soon, I started noticing small things, unsettling things. Victoria began replacing photos of my father and me with pictures of her and Ryan. His study, the one room Dad never let anyone touch, was suddenly locked. When I asked why, she smiled politely. "Oh, Ethan, you need rest. Let's not reopen old memories." Her words sounded sweet, but the tone behind them wasn't. That night, I wandered the halls, unable to sleep. The house creaked like it was trying to whisper its secrets. As I passed by the study, I heard voices, soft, but sharp enough to cut through the silence. It was Victoria. Her voice low, cold. "Once it's finalized," she said, "he won't get a thing." Ryan replied, uncertain. "Are you sure it'll work?" "It already has," she whispered. "He has no idea." My heart stopped. I stood frozen, just outside the door, every word sinking in. They were talking about me, about the inheritance, about my father's will. I stepped back quietly, my pulse hammering in my ears. The woman who called herself family had just erased me, and my own brother helped her do it. That night I didn't sleep. I sat by the window until dawn, staring at the empty driveway where my father once stood waving goodbye each morning. And in that silence, I made myself a promise. "They think I'm too kind to fight back," I whispered. "They're wrong. They say you can prepare for anything, but nothing prepares you for betrayal from your own family." The day of the will reading arrived like a storm waiting to break. Everyone gathered in my father's old study. The room that once smelled of his cologne and cigar smoke now felt cold, like it had forgotten him already. I sat quietly at the edge of the long oak table, trying to keep calm. Across from me sat Victoria, perfectly composed in her black dress, pretending grief looked good on her. Beside her, Ryan fidgeted, tapping his fingers against the table, avoiding my eyes completely. Mr. Cole, our family lawyer, looked uncomfortable. His hands trembled slightly as he opened the folder in front of him. The sound of the paper rustling filled the silence. Like thunder before rain, he cleared his throat. "As per the final will and testament of Mr. Raymond Hall." I swallowed hard, waiting to hear my name. The estate, properties, and business holdings, shall be transferred to Victoria Hale and Ryan Hale. And then, silence. No mention of me. Not once. The air left my lungs. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. But Mr. Cole didn't continue. He looked down, avoiding my gaze, as if the truth was too heavy to face. I forced a shaky laugh. There must be a mistake. My father would never. Victoria placed her hand on mine before I could finish. "Oh, Ethan," she said softly, voice dripping with false sympathy. "Sometimes people make decisions we don't understand. Your father probably wanted to take care of the business through us. You've always been more free-spirited." Her words cut sharper than any knife. Ryan added quietly, "Maybe Dad thought this was best for everyone." I turned to him. "Best for who, Ryan?" "For you?" He looked away, guilt flickering for a second before disappearing behind silence. I could feel the anger rising, but I swallowed it down. The room was watching, waiting for me to break. Instead, I stood up slowly, forcing myself to stay composed. "If that's what the will says," I said, my voice trembling, "then I suppose there's nothing more to discuss." I left the study before the tears could fall. Later that night, the house was empty and silent. I wandered into my father's office, the one place that still felt like him. His desk lamp flickered weakly as I traced my hand across the wood. It felt cold, lifeless. I whispered, "Dad, why would you do this?" And that's when I noticed it, a small piece of tape stuck beneath the edge of the drawer. Curious, I pulled it gently. Out came a tiny silver key, glinting in the lamplight. Attached to it was a folded note, written in my father's familiar handwriting. "If you're reading this, it means the truth has been hidden. Trust your instincts, son." My hands shook as I read it again. My father knew. He knew something wasn't right. I looked around the study, the photos, the books, the desk, and suddenly everything felt different. This wasn't over. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of his final message to me. Victoria thought she'd won. Ryan thought I'd walk away quietly. But my father had left me something far more powerful than money, a secret, and I intended to find it. I slipped the note into my pocket and whispered to the empty room, "You trusted me, Dad. I won't let you down." That night, for the first time since he passed, I didn't feel weak. I felt awake. I couldn't stop thinking about that note. The truth has been hidden. Trust your instincts. Son, those words looped in my mind every hour, every minute, like a quiet drumbeat guiding me toward something unseen. That night, I sat in my father's study again, the same desk where I had found the small key. The lamp's soft light flickered across the room, casting long shadows on the walls. The silence felt alive, as if the house itself was waiting for me to uncover what it had been hiding. I started searching carefully, opening drawers, flipping through ledgers, running my fingers along the edges of the wooden panels. For a long time, nothing. Then my hand brushed against the back panel of the bottom drawer. Something felt loose. I pressed it gently, and with a quiet click, the panel shifted open. Hidden inside was a small USB drive, black and dusty, with a handwritten label taped across it. Legacy. My heart skipped a beat. I plugged it into my laptop, praying it still worked. The screen lit up. A folder appeared with several files, letters, scanned documents, and one video file titled, "For My Son." I hesitated for a second before clicking play. The screen flickered, and suddenly, there he was. My father, sitting in this same study, wearing his old sweater, looking straight into the camera. His eyes looked tired, but his voice was steady. "Ethan," he began, "if you're watching this, it means I couldn't protect everything the way I wanted. Someone close to me has changed what's mine." I leaned closer, frozen. I trusted too easily. I saw signs but ignored them. Papers moved, signatures missing, whispers behind closed doors. You've always had a good heart, son. But now you'll need more than kindness. You'll need clarity. He paused, exhaling deeply. Don't trust appearances, Ethan. What's written may not be the truth. The will, it's not what I intended. My chest tightened. My father knew. He had seen it coming. Find Thomas Hale, he continued. He knows where the truth is kept. And no matter what they say, remember, what's yours can be stolen from paper, but never from purpose. The screen went black. I sat there, staring at the reflection of my own face in the dark screen, heart pounding. For a moment, it felt like my father was still there, guiding me, protecting me, even from beyond. I opened the other documents on the drive, scanned letters between my father and his lawyer, contracts, and one file that caught my attention. Will underscore draft 1.pdf. Inside, in black and white, was proof. The original draft clearly named me as the primary heir and executor. My name, erased from the final version, my throat tightened. I felt anger, sadness, and something else burning beneath it, determination. I whispered to the empty room. They erased my name from the paper, but not from the truth. I closed the laptop and sat in silence, the glow from the screen fading slowly. Victoria and Ryan thought this was over. They thought I'd given up. But now I knew my father didn't just leave me memories. He left me a mission. I took the USB drive, slipped it into my pocket, and looked at my father's portrait hanging on the wall. Don't worry, Dad, I whispered. I'll finish what you started. And in that moment, I wasn't the quiet, defeated son anymore. I was the man my father raised, ready to uncover every secret buried beneath the surface. Some truths hide in plain sight. You just have to look long enough and be brave enough to face what you find. After discovering the USB drive and my father's video, I couldn't sit still. His words haunted me. Someone close to me has changed what's mine. That someone could only be Victoria. But knowing wasn't enough. I needed proof. Real proof. So I reached out to someone who might know more. Clara, Mr. Cole's assistant. She had worked with my father for years and was one of the few people he actually trusted. We met in a quiet cafe outside the city. The kind of place where no one asks questions. Clara looked nervous as she sat across from me, her hands wrapped tightly around her coffee cup. Clara, I said softly, I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need to know the truth. Did my father ever make another will, one that wasn't the version read at the meeting? Her eyes darted around before she whispered, Yes, Ethan. There was another version, the original one. It listed you as the main heir. But after your father passed, Mrs. Hale came in with documents saying your father had requested last-minute changes. I clenched my fists under the table. And Mr. Cole, my stomach turned. For everyone's good, except mine and my father's memory. That night, I returned to the house and began digging through every old file I could find. It took hours, piles of papers, faded folders, endless coffee, until I saw it. A scanned document buried inside an old hard drive. The file name, will underscore draft 1 underscore RH. I opened it, and there it was, my father's signature, the same looping stroke I'd seen on every card he ever wrote me. It was dated 2 weeks before he died. The final version they presented was dated 5 days after my father's hand. Couldn't have written that. Then I found something else, hidden bank transfers between Victoria's personal account and Mr. Cole's firm, disguised as consulting fees. The puzzle was complete. The betrayal was real, but I couldn't confront them, not yet. I needed to be patient, like my father always taught me. Never fight in anger, he used to say. Let truth do the talking. So I played along. I smiled at family dinners, nodded when Victoria talked about managing the estate, and even congratulated Ryan on his new ventures. ventures I knew were built on lies. Meanwhile, I quietly backed up every file, saved every document, and contacted someone in legal circles who could help. The foundation of their scheme was about to crack. They just didn't know it yet. As I shut my laptop that night, I looked at my father's picture and whispered, "They think I'm broken, but I'm just getting started." And in that moment, I felt it, the beginning of justice. Sometimes the best way to fight deceit is to let the deceivers think they've already won. I spent days watching Victoria and Ryan act as if nothing had happened. They smiled during breakfast, talked about the estate, and even had the audacity to ask me about my future plans. They had no idea I was already 5 steps ahead. It was time to turn the tables. Quietly. The first move was emotional. I reached out to Ryan and invited him to meet for coffee. He hesitated at first, but eventually agreed. Maybe guilt made him curious. Or maybe fear. When he walked into the cafe, he looked uneasy, his eyes darting around, avoiding mine. I smiled, acting calm. "I just wanted to talk," I said. "No fights. No lawyers, just peace." He nodded, though his jaw tightened. "Yeah, sure. It's been tough on everyone." I leaned forward slightly. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about Dad lately. About how he always said, the truth can't stay buried forever. Funny thing, right?" Ryan's face paled. His coffee cup trembled slightly in his hands. "Yeah. Funny," I smiled again, slow, deliberate. "I've been going through some of his files. Found a few things that didn't add up." He froze for half a second, then forced a laugh. "Old files? Dad had tons of stuff. Most of it's probably outdated." "Maybe," I said softly. "Or maybe someone made sure the new ones replaced the old." His eyes snapped up to mine. And for that brief moment, I saw it. Guilt, fear, the truth he'd been trying to hide. He stood abruptly. "I have to go." "Of course," I said, my tone gentle. "Tell Victoria I said hello." That was the first crack. I could feel it. The guilt was spreading. The second move was strategic. Late that night, I went through the financial folders again, tracing every suspicious transfer. And there it was, a series of digital payments labeled consultation fees, all directed to Mr. Cole's private account. The sender? Victoria Hale. I copied everything, timestamps, account numbers, emails. I even found one message she sent to Cole weeks after my father's death. "Make sure the papers are signed. No loose ends." That was my proof, the kind of truth they couldn't talk their way out of, but I didn't rush to expose it. I wanted them to feel the weight of what was coming. Victoria had started to sense something. I could see it in the way she looked at me, that sharpness behind her fake smile. She knew I was up to something, but she didn't know what. And that uncertainty was breaking her calm. Every time I passed her in the hallway, I made sure to smile, polite, patient, quiet. That's what scared her most. Silence. One night, as I stood alone in the study, staring at my father's photo, I felt a strange mix of emotions, sadness, anger, but also pride. I whispered, "They stole my name from the will, but they can't erase my father's faith in me." I looked at the USB drive on the desk, the printed documents stacked beside it, the truth in my hands, and I knew what had to be done. I placed everything into a sealed envelope and handed it to Richard Moore. The story spread faster than I expected. And for the first time, Victoria lost control of the narrative. She tried to act calm, holding her charity events and smiling for cameras, but I could see the cracks. Her calls became shorter, her tone sharper. Her world, once spotless, was beginning to crumble. Ryan wasn't faring any better. His investors started demanding proof of funds, his deals collapsing under suspicion. I heard from one of his associates that he'd begun drinking heavily, snapping at anyone who mentioned the word inheritance. They both suspected me. But that was the beauty of it. They couldn't prove anything. I stayed polite, present, even helpful. I joined family dinners, listened to their complaints, and nodded sympathetically as they spoke about false rumors, all while watching their empire fall apart, piece by quiet piece. Still, I knew this wasn't the end. They might have been cornered, but they weren't finished. Not yet. One night, as I sat in my father's study, organizing my next move, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. The message was simple. "Ethan, it's Thomas Hale, your father's old notary. We need to meet. It's time to read the real will." My breath caught. The real will? For a moment, everything stopped. If he truly had the original document, then this was it, the final piece of the puzzle. I stared at my father's portrait on the wall, his eyes calm and wise as ever. "You were right, Dad," I whispered. "Truth doesn't need to fight. It just needs time." I grabbed my coat, feeling that familiar mix of fear and resolve, because tomorrow, the silence would finally end, and the truth would speak for itself. Some moments change everything, not because they're loud, but because they bring the silence you've been waiting for. The next morning, I drove to meet Thomas Hale, my father's old notary. He'd been a close friend of my dad for decades, a man of quiet integrity, the kind my father always admired. His office was small and filled with old books, the air heavy with dust and wisdom. When he saw me, his eyes softened. "Ethan," he said, "your father always said you'd come when the time was right." Those words alone sent a chill through me. Thomas motioned for me to sit and pulled out an old metal safe from the corner. He turned the key slowly, click by click, until the door swung open. Inside was a sealed brown envelope, edges worn but intact. My father's initials, R.H., pressed into the red wax. Thomas placed it gently on the table. "This," he said, "is the original will, untouched, legally sealed and recorded the week before your father fell ill." My hands shook as I broke the seal. I unfolded the paper carefully, and the first thing I saw stopped my breath cold. Raymond Hale, being of sound mind, named my son, Ethan Hale, as sole heir and executor of my estate. There it was, clear, simple. Final. The truth. Every word felt like a piece of my father returning to me. Every stroke of his signature proof that he never betrayed me. That everything Victoria claimed was a lie. I looked up at Thomas, my voice barely a whisper. "So the one they read?" He nodded sadly. "Forged. Your father came to me days before he passed. He said he feared someone would alter his wishes after he was gone. I promised to keep this safe until you were ready." I leaned back in my chair, 1,000 emotions crashing through me: relief, grief, gratitude, and something deeper. Peace. It wasn't anger that filled me now. It was understanding. "Revenge," I said quietly, "is best when served with silence." Thomas smiled faintly. "Your father would agree." I spent the rest of the afternoon with him, confirming every legal detail. The notary, the witnesses, the registration, all authentic. Every document Victoria presented was a fraud. The truth wasn't just emotional now, it was undeniable. Before leaving, Thomas handed me a flash drive containing digital proof of the will's authenticity. "This," he said, "will clear your father's name forever." As I drove home, the weight that had pressed on my chest for months began to lift. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow across the horizon, the same kind of sunset my father used to admire from the porch. For the first time, I didn't feel broken. I felt calm. The lies that had haunted my family were finally unraveling, and soon, the world would see the truth. That night, as I placed the sealed will on my desk, I whispered, "You kept your promise. Dad, now it's my turn to keep mine." Tomorrow, the truth would no longer be hidden. Tomorrow, it would stand in the light. Some truths don't whisper. They wait, then speak so loudly that no lie can survive their echo. A week later, the family gathered once again inside my father's Sometimes all it takes is time. Truth has a way of settling the dust. When it finally comes out, it doesn't need to scream, it just stands there. Undeniable. In the weeks that followed the second will reading, everything changed. Victoria Hale, once the image of perfection and control, now stood under investigation for fraud and forgery. Her lawyers tried to twist the story, to shift blame, but the evidence spoke louder than her words. The same newspapers that once praised her now printed headlines that exposed her deception. Her reputation, the empire she built on charm and manipulation, fell apart piece by piece. She wasn't the graceful widow anymore. She was the woman who betrayed her husband's trust. As for Ryan, he couldn't face anyone. He stopped answering calls, stopped showing up in public. One day, he simply packed up and left town. No message, no goodbye. Maybe shame became too heavy for him to carry. Or maybe he finally realized that some losses can't be fixed with money. And me? I didn't celebrate. There were no cheers, no victory speeches, just quiet relief. I spent days restoring what my father had built. His name, his foundation, his legacy. The Hale Foundation, once neglected under Victoria's control, reopened its doors to help families in need. The very people my father cared about most. Walking through the halls again felt strange at first. His voice echoed in my memory, calm, steady, full of kindness. He used to say, "Real wealth isn't what you keep, Ethan, it's what you give back." Those words guided every step I took. Every project I approved, every family we helped, it all felt like a conversation with him. One that never really ended. People began to remember him not as the man at the center of a scandal, but as the honest, generous soul he always was. And that, more than anything, made it all worth it. One evening, I found myself on the same porch where it all began, the place where I once sat in grief, feeling like the world had taken everything from me. The sunset stretched across the horizon, painting the sky in gold and red, just the way my father loved. The wind was calm. The house was quiet. For the first time in months, my heart felt still. I looked out toward the fading light and whispered, "They took my share." But I gained something far greater, peace. In that moment, I understood. All the anger, all the pain, all the nights I'd spent wondering why me, it led here. To this stillness. To this peace. Because in the end, truth had spoken. Justice had been served. And the legacy my father left behind wasn't money or property. It was a lesson that honesty may bend under pressure, but it never breaks. As the last light disappeared behind the hills, I smiled. For the first time since he was gone, I felt like my father was sitting beside me again, and for both of us. The storm was finally over. Greed has many faces. Sometimes it looks like family. Sometimes it looks like love. But in the end, it always shows its true reflection. When I look back at everything that happened, the lies, the manipulation, the nights I couldn't sleep wondering why, I realize now that every storm had a purpose. It wasn't just about what I lost. It was about what I learned. My father used to say, "Ethan, people's hearts can change, but truth never does." Back then, I didn't fully understand what he meant. But now I do. Greed had blinded the people closest to me. It made them believe they could rewrite love into ownership and loyalty into power. They forgot that the truth doesn't vanish just because someone hides it. It waits, quietly, patiently, until it finds its voice again. When the truth finally came out, I didn't feel like celebrating. There was no joy in watching others crumble, not even those who hurt me. Because the truth isn't about revenge. It's about balance. About restoring what's right without losing yourself in the process. Victoria and Ryan had taken everything they could, the home, the money, the trust. But in chasing all of that, they lost something far more precious: peace, integrity, love. I remember sitting in my father's study one last time. The evening sun spilling through the window, lighting up the desk where it all began. The papers, the will, the secrets, they were all gone now. What remained was his photo, that calm smile that once gave me strength. I whispered, "You were right, Dad. Greed can blind even those closest to us. But truth, it always finds its voice." That was the moment I truly let go. Not because I forgot, but because I forgave. Forgiveness doesn't mean weakness, it means freedom. The kind of freedom that comes when you stop carrying the weight of what others did to you. Justice had come, not through anger, but through patience. And maybe that's the hardest kind of justice, the one that arrives slowly, quietly but completely. I used to think my inheritance was the fortune my father left behind. Now I know it was the wisdom he gave me through pain, the lesson that integrity can't be stolen, and peace can't be bought. As I sit here on the same porch where it all started, the sunset paints the sky gold. The wind is gentle. The house feels lighter, freer. I close my eyes and smile. In the end, I whisper, the inheritance wasn't the money. It was the lesson. And that lesson? That no matter how deep the lies, truth will rise. No matter how dark the betrayal, justice will find its way, because the truth doesn't rush. It waits, and when it finally speaks, it leaves everyone silent. Soft music fades in, gentle, reflective tone. This isn't just my story. It's a reminder for anyone listening. If you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever been wronged, hold on. Justice may take time, but it always arrives. Fade out, final line echoes. The inheritance wasn't the money. It was the lesson. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of truth, betrayal, and justice. Because here, every story reminds us, no matter how deep the lie, truth always finds its voice.